Good evening, everyone, and welcome to WCNY's television studios. Thank you so much for joining us. And for Sun, Sustainable Upstate Network, who has presented this event alongside with WCNY to bring you here today for green business and a sustainable future. I just want to take a quick moment to thank all of the Sun members, and I'm going to put you on the spot. If you are a Sun member, give me a little stand. Oh, yeah. Little round of applause. I see there's not anybody in the front row. Is it like high school? No one wants to sit in the front? So thank you also to our panelists who are here today and our moderator. We're gonna get into the panel discussion very soon. But real quick, I want to just thank the Sun members who helped sponsor today to make this event possible. So I'd like to thank Blue Rock Energy. We're going to thank Henderson Wholesale Lamps, ICS, Pyramid Brokerage Company, Toshiba Business Solutions, Sustainable Office Solutions, Syracuse Haulers, UBS, VIP Structures, and Walton Architectural. JDS and Three Peaks Energy really stepped up at a bigger level, so big applause to all of them. So I'd like to introduce the founder of Sun, Sustainable Upstate Network, Andy Pico.
Okay, so I don't have a script, so that's good. Couple things. First of all, before I get into it, who in the audience right now, with a show of hands, has heard about or is familiar with Sun? All right, let me do this the other way. Who is not, has never heard of us before? Well, to everybody that's here, the ones that know about us, thank you. The ones that are not, thanks for coming in and trying to learn a little bit more about this group. I'm associated with some wonderful professionals. Our desire, well, we started the organization in November of 2009. My concept was LEED certified buildings, and being sustainable was becoming very popular. I own a company called Sustainable Office Solutions. My business was born from the fact that 1,504,000 tons of office furniture gets thrown away every year, of which a lot of it should not. So I wanted to be the stopgap for that and try to repurpose or reuse the product when I can. A lot of it needs to be thrown out, but some didn't. And all the members here share similar stories. So the best example of who we are, we're kind of like a physical search engine for solutions and sustainability. My old line, I'll use it one more time, was there's a sustainability pool over there and everybody's having fun in there, and we're all looking out from the outside trying to figure out, how do we get involved? How do we take advantage of this sustainability? What does it mean to us? And we allow people to come into the shallow end and learn the basics. So we're going to hear from, example, Okra, which is the first thing you can do. You can recycle right at your office. You could change your lighting very easily, with some of our members can help you with that and take advantage of funding from the government. So we're very passionate about sustainable. We don't have everything covered by a member, but what I will assure you is every one of our members probably knows somebody that can help you with a challenge or an idea you might have. And I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm going to cite one person example because he was really thinking way out, and that's the guy that chose to sit in the front, Mike Callett. Mike is in the real estate business, Cushman Wakefield. But I remember Mike had this concept of creating this agri-park out in land that wasn't really being used out in Canastota, I think, Casanova area. And his idea was to create a campus where the waste heat from one organization could be heating something else or helping with a process. And the recycling of one byproduct might be the fuel for the other. That's real outside the box thinking. So our group is all about that. We meet twice a month, and we share ideas, and we hope that all of you reach out to us with anything that you might have that you're challenged with, and we'll try to find you the right resource. So with that, I'm not going to spend much more time on it, but just to let you know that. And at this time, we're going to introduce Lauren, correct? So now I have a great pleasure. I've known Lauren Stanek for a while. There's a lot that I can read off of here, but she don't want me to. But I'm gonna go over some key things. Lauren is absolutely, without a doubt, extremely sustainable. She believes it in her heart. It's all the way to her core. So I'm going to read a little bit about so you know. She owns a company called Rehabitat. It's an interior sustainable design group that also provides projects with management services. To date, projects have included, I think this is important to know, renovations at the R.E. Dietz Lantern Building, sustainability consulting at Destiny USA, the Destiny USA Embassy Suite, the new hotel that was just built. She was used to help them become more sustainable. The Crossgate Mall and True Homewood Suites, Seneca Savings Home Office in Baldwinsville, New York State Insurance Fund offices, the Town of DeWitt government offices, and many others. Prior to doing this, though, she was the sustainability coordinator and enhancement project manager for Pyramid. Now, I don't know if you all know this, but somebody came up with this idea, and I can't say it was Lauren, I can't say it isn't. But as new tenants were moving into the mall because they were following LEED practices, they decided to do something that I don't know if many people did. They required the new tenants to become LEED certified. And to some of these companies that might sell sneakers or something else, they've never heard of it before. So the challenge was how to do it, and the requirement was you had to do it. So the new tenants that came in complemented the efforts of the mall. And I don't know how many, there was over 60 businesses that were brought in. So through Lauren's effort and Destiny's effort, people were introduced to LEED. She's also the past chair of the U.S. Green Building Council of New York State. So LEED is Leadership for Energy and Environmental Design, and that's a structure of how you build a building to be green and responsible. This organization is a local chapter of the USGBC, the U.S. Green Business Council. I think I'm doing this pretty good off the top of my head. So Lauren's been very, very involved with all this. She's a heck of a student from the Rochester Institute of Technology, and also completed a Bachelor of Arts, of Fine Art. And she is, last thing, several years after Lauren completed it, she has a Master of Science at SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry, and she's going to become one of our newest Sun members in July. I just put her on the spot. I'd like to introduce Lauren Stanek. She's going to be the moderator. Thank you, Lauren.
No, it's good. It's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I am so excited to be here tonight, especially with this panel that I have with me here. We have such a diverse group of individuals that are here to talk about what it is that they're doing and synergies that are taking place across all kinds of industries, both here in the United States and probably even abroad. So with no further ado, I'd like to allow everyone to introduce themselves.
My name is Dale Coca. I am a recycling specialist with the Onondaga County Resource Recovery Agency. My focus is to work with businesses, which is probably a primary reason why I was invited on this panel. Okra's involved in recycling, but also other materials management for the whole county of Onondaga, which services just under 500,000 people.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Farrell and I'm with UBS Asset Management. We are a global investment manager with about $750 billion in assets under management. We invest money on behalf of individuals and institutional investors like endowments and foundations and pension funds. Of that $750 billion, $100 billion roughly is invested in sustainable investment opportunities. My role, I'm part of an impact and sustainable investing team that works with individuals, family offices, high net worth individuals, and institutional investors, helping them identify investment opportunities that not only help them achieve their return objectives, but also align with their values. And we as an organization see this as an amazing trend, both from millennials and women and other investors who are really catching on to the fact that sustainable companies at the end of the day are highly profitable and successful businesses.
Hi, Dave Rogers, president of SUNY Morrisville. Hopefully most of you have some familiarity with Morrisville. We're located on the old thruway, Route 20. We started in 1908, 40 years before SUNY itself. So we started as an agricultural college, a farmer's college, if you will. We now have over 80 academic programs. For the first 80 years or so at Morrisville, we were a two-year college specializing in agriculture and technology programs. About 20 years ago, we started to develop bachelor programs aligned with those two-year degrees, and Since I started there in 1998, I've been a big part of those bachelor program developments. So we have a couple of dozen. Again, those specialize largely in agriculture, but it spawns into areas of sustainability, renewable energy, because these days you can't talk about agricultural development without having concerns about environmental quality and practices of sustainability. So we have about 3,000 students, 150 faculty, a couple hundred staff, and all of them are very conscious of how precious the environment is, and whether a student is in an academic program proper or not, they all bring a conscience of sustainability, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later.
Hi, my name is Sarah Martin. I am owner of Critical Path Engineering. It's a small woman-owned firm that specializes in project management and engineering for the food and beverage industry. I worked for O'Brien & Gear Engineers for about 17 years, and about 2 years ago I saw a little niche out there for the new emergence of the craft and artisan market, especially in brewing and wineries. Yeah, exactly. So what I did is I took a leap of faith. I started my own company, and what I found is these companies need a lot of help with growth, and especially the environmental challenges that come with growth. So it's been quite an interesting ride.
So I'd like to start by asking each of you, since your backgrounds are so diverse, how has each of your companies and organizations focus on sustainability impacted either your employees or your end user or the bottom line of maybe your own company or the companies that you're helping with? Can we start back with you, Dale?
Sure. We'll start with me. Part of my role, Okra is, believe it or not, a relatively small organization, and a large part of my role is actually to help other organizations become more sustainable. So I would say that a lot of it is communicating things that may seem common sense to people who work in the world of sustainability all the time and bringing it to people who it becomes new to. We have a very successful, though small, marketing budget that we use to reach out to businesses, to get them to reach out to us. And then people like me go out and make consultations with those businesses and show them how they can reduce their usage. We always start with reduction of uses of materials, and then how to reuse the ones you do have, and then how to recycle properly or otherwise dispose of. So, what kind of impacts does that have for, in our workplace? We kind of use our office, which is a small office, as a little bit of an incubator to see how things work. When we ask other people who are trying to go the extra mile to have composting in their office, we try it in our office, and we see what are the challenges there. We want to hear back from them too, but we also want to understand those challenges. So it's a little bit of living the message as well as it is spreading the message.
Excellent. Now, I feel like you have so much that you do with, working with clients as well and kind of going out to people and owners. So do you have similar experiences? How do you incorporate sustainability into your way of life?
Sure, great question. So I guess I would start out, because we do come from such different perspectives. I mean, UBS as a group has 60,000 employees around the world. And one of the reasons that I was attracted to join the group was at the very highest levels, there's a commitment to sustainability. So the head of the organization, Sergio Armati, made a public statement that sustainability would be part of everything that we do. And remember, UBS Group has not just asset management where I sit, but wealth management as well as investment banking. And so part of our everyday life includes sustainability. He also made a commitment that we would help channel funds toward different goals, in particular the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or the UN SDGs. So while that comes from the top, I'm actually practicing it with my team on a day-to-day basis. And what's fascinating is we have, as I mentioned, about $100 billion in sustainable investments, but we have other investment teams coming to our team saying, hey, this looks really interesting. Can you share with us some of the information you are getting around environmental, social, and governance issues, and teach us how that might help us make better investment decisions. So these investment teams are actually leaning in to this idea of using sustainability to impact valuations and different models. Also, I get really inspired by some of our younger, more junior employees who come up to me and say, I want to be a part of this because I believe in it. How can I educate myself and bring this into my everyday life? Which for a big financial services company is quite innovative. So we're seeing it from the top down and from the inside growing out, and it's quite inspirational.
Dave, I mean, I see a window for maybe talking about millennials for you and your experiences and challenges at SUNY Morrisville.
Yeah, maybe we'll leave out the last J-Board meetings that I went through with those millennials, but I think there's at least 3 ways in which Morrisville embraces a wide array of sustainability. So one is obvious. We produce the next generation of leaders. We have credit programs that produce graduates at the 2- and 4-year level. We have partnerships where we reach out to either individuals or companies to help share our knowledge so that through a variety of outreach efforts. And then we also kind of practice what we teach. And so let me just mention, in the first category, we have both 2- and 4-year degrees, not just in central areas like renewable resources, environmental conservation, but renewable energy, say, is a bachelor program now that has instruction in microhydro, solar, wind, geothermal. So we produce the next generation of leaders through fairly difficult, rigorous programs of study, and that's a natural outreach for a college. Second, those partnerships I mentioned, there's a wide array in which institutes that we have, Renewable Energy Training Center, the Environmental Training Center, we offer non-credit instruction, and we partner with individuals or companies that want to have some kind of knowledge on how to renovate their facility or retrofit to achieve enhanced energy savings or environmental improvements. And then finally on campus, this is kind of the fun part. We become, both for academic and non-credit outreach, we become a center for viability. So our faculty and students get to tweak different kinds of on-campus facilities. So we've got, as I mentioned, we have solar, wind, geothermal, we've got a biodigester for the manure waste, we have microhydro considerations. There's all kinds of things that we have on campus for demonstration projects, both for teaching and for people to assess different options. And then there's, as you mentioned, Lauren, these millennials. They are passionate about sustainability. Everything from making certain that I never throw away a styrofoam cup and then I have a stainless steel water container. We don't do plastic often as much as we used to because they want us to use this potato-based plates and utensils. So they're always coming up with something. I think they get it on the social media site, but it's an ongoing challenge for us to keep up with them. They bring that kind of passion to sustainable concerns.
I think we're definitely going to come back to this millennial topic, but I want to give you an opportunity too to, because again, you're coming from the consulting side of things, so I think your perspective is probably a little different and valuable to others in our audience here.
Yeah, so so in the food and beverage world, it's such a low margin product that they make that sustainability and cost effectiveness really go hand in hand. So we're working, every drop of water that they save actually equals profit for them, especially when it's a consumer-driven world. But also on top of it, the sustainability, being consumer-driven, is actually something that they're looking to do, be it turn their waste into beneficial energy or composting their solids or utilizing a waste product as animal feed or a beneficial byproduct. So it's really neat working in the food and beverage industry because sustainability is just natural there. It's just something they strive to do every day. So it's fun to be a part of that.
Excellent. So do you think that you're part of kind of this zero waste culture that we're seeing happening and starting, this minimalist but zero waste kind of tie-in?
Yeah, I think especially in the food and beverage industry, it's definitely driving that way as much as possible. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So let's kind of go back to this integration within our companies. We've been talking a lot about millennials, kind of down the line, and you're talking about integrating sustainability efforts into the corporate workplace and how to get people to kind of cling on to this. Do you see with are millennials any better at it than any other people, or maybe faster to cling on to this idea?
I think that at face value, it may seem like we would just assume that, but I see people from all age ranges, especially people who are approaching retirement. People, when they have grandchildren, they start saying, oh my God, we've got to do something, and they start feeling it's too late. So I wouldn't say that millennials are the only people driving it. I think you see it across generations as far as a desire for more sustainable practices. But we were talking before the show about one particular instance. We were meeting with Barton and LaJudas for an award that we were giving them about sustainability, and they had specifically mentioned that having sustainable initiatives at their business and visible sustainable practices was attractive to candidates coming out of college. It was not just important for them from a sustainability side of things, but from a business competitiveness. They wanted the best employees, and the best employees want to be at places that are sustainable. So I think that you can't ignore the next generation's demands.
Excellent. And then what are you seeing as far as people who are coming to you about sustainability-related investing? Does it span all age groups? Is it just
Sure.
for
So
the young people? Is it everyone?
It's everyone. I mean, picking up off of my colleague's comments, there's over $7 trillion in the U.S. now channeled towards sustainable investing. That's a big number. It's no longer a niche form of investing. And the companies that are including these practices are not only attracting the best talent, they're also attracting dollars of investment. And their cost of capital is therefore lowered as well. So what we see is whether it's grandparents thinking about their grandchildren or millennials or others, the movement of capital towards those companies that are using best practices, whether in the food and beverage industry, in the textile industry, in manufacturing, in technology, where data privacy is critical. If they are moving towards best practices, they will attract capital, they will be more successful. And it's across the board. So I think that while the millennials will probably be those that push this forward over the coming years, right now we see across the board interest. And again, it's not just individuals, but it's those large institutions as well, whose stakeholders include students, trustees of universities, graduates, or at a pension fund level, pensioners in the healthcare industry, or retired teachers and professors. We all want our voices to be heard so that our investments align with our values.
So I could tell lots of stories about how students are passionate in ways that often create trouble on campus.
The good kind, though,
but
right?
very positive. So two quick comments about Morrisville and then maybe SUNY. So here's an example. We know that college students have an affinity for beer, and so do most Americans. So we started a brewing courses, and we have a brewing facility right at the Copper Turret on Route 20. So 8 brands of beer on tap if you come down. But so we know there's great beer, but there's also byproducts. So the students became especially concerned about where the waste would go. So it's now trucked over to the biodigester. And so food waste and beer byproducts can be processed by our biodigester along with the manure. There's a recipe to make it very efficient. But students were just as interested in knowing what we would do with the byproducts as the beer. That's not quite true. So we've managed to find ways to produce food, beer, and make certain that the waste is monitored in a way that ultimately produces gas that gets filtered and then put into a generator. And so we generate enough electricity at the dairy site to cover their energy costs. But at a more macro level, I'll just share this. We have a new chancellor at the SUNY system, Christina Johnson, who not only worked in the Obama administration in the energy area as an assistant secretary, but also started her own microhydro company and is so passionate about energy that she's bringing macro kinds of investments to SUNY and is setting standards for every campus to realize, not only in terms of conservation, but production. I'm pleased to say that Morrisville's ahead of some of the campuses in that regard because of our history. But when leaders come into a large organization like that, they can have profound effects by setting benchmarks that are realized. So working, frankly, with Governor Cuomo and the Chancellor, they've set standards for SUNY, and SUNY's a big part of campus facilities across the state. So leaders can make a difference when they bring that passion and that translates into action.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah, we've been hearing a little bit about the academic side of some of these technologies, but you actually get to put these into practice.
I do.
So are there any interesting examples that maybe you've been involved with or, have worked on?
I'd say one of the more interesting ones out there, and speaking of millennials and the next generation, is Noblehurst Farms, which is out in Avon, New York. And young Chris Noble, who is inheriting the farm from his father, wasn't just satisfied with being a farmer. So he built a digester on site. He he formed his own company called Natural Upcycle. He brought in Wegmans food waste. He got a good chunk of that from Rochester and Buffalo. He also operates a creamery and a cheese factory right on site, which uses the energy from the digester into the, you gotta follow me here, energy into the digester. The digester goes to the creamery. The waste from the creamery goes back to wastewater treatment, where it separates into water for cows, and then the concentrated waste product goes back in the digester to create more electricity. So it's a full circle sustainable solution, and it's a great example of the next generation doing more with what they have. So if anybody gets out there, it is extraordinary to see that project.
What's the name of it again?
It's Noblehurst Farms. It's out in Avon, New York. And then one more project, speaking of beer, just to tie it all together, I've had the pleasure to work for Saranac in Utica, New York. And they, I have to mention it is an extraordinary company, but one project that they took on was taking and using their waste to make electricity, which they use back in the brewing process. There was really no financial drivers to do this. They did this as good stewards. So I think that's a good story of sustainability right here in central New York. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, so what's so interesting about sustainability is obviously it's very cyclical, and there's a lot of reciprocity, I guess, within it. And because of that, it kind of takes me to, well, what happens when that doesn't go just as planned? So, for example, China has recently said that they're not going to accept some of the recycled materials that we've been sending over that way. So what happens? Should we still recycle? Is it still worthwhile?
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. We should still recycle. Changes happen in the market, and what we definitely don't want people to do is give up and lose hope simply because there may be what we'll call a hiccup in the system. For those of you who may be less familiar with this, China recently, as of July, instituted extremely strict import restrictions on recycled materials, not on the grounds of political posturing necessarily, but because they said they don't want to be the world's dumping ground. So they dropped their tolerance, their threshold from 5% down to 3% contamination. That's like things that shouldn't be in the bales went from 5% down to 3%, and then they dropped it to 0.3%. Suddenly, no one can adapt that quickly. So what it ultimately did was say it backed up the flow of recyclables. The rest of the world, they process about 50% of the world's recyclables. The rest of the world had to find different outlets. Well, sometimes it backs up, and some places have been struggling with figuring out what to do with these recyclables that they can't process right now. And we can't build facilities quick enough to deal with it. So we have a little bit of a problem, but what we definitely want people to do is keep recycling. Just because your recyclables may be sitting around somewhere not being used right away, or something in some extreme cases may be actually being landfilled, not the case here in central New York for sure. The message is keep recycling, keep up with these practices. Things may change, but I think as George Bush said, stay the course. Along, for any of you who remember that, stay the course. We'll get through this, and sustainability practices are not going away anytime soon, even if there may be like a sudden policy that may happen for one short term.
That's a relief to hear, for sure. And speaking of relief, I want to get back to our discussing kind of long-term financial goals. So what goes into assessing a company's, approach to sustainability?
Sure. So right now we think about sustainability factors in 3 buckets. The industry as a whole uses a term called ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors. And these are factors that are material to a business. Take the case of water for the beverage industry, or recycling, perhaps for technology industry. And we actually look at those different factors and how companies are approaching it. And actually, off the back of that example of China and recyclables, what we're seeing in some of the companies that we assess and we then deem to include in our portfolios around recycling is they're actually thinking about, after the use of the product at the very end of its life cycle, what happens. It's not the responsibility of that company to necessarily take on. They have no formal obligation to take on the recycling of those end products. But we actually have a Japanese company that we've invested in, and they have a pretty sophisticated program for taking those now disposed of products and recycling them. And so we actually think that it will attract customers, and so their brand, the value of their company goes up in terms of its brand or image. And in addition to that, we feel that if they're also using best practices around their governance, so their board structure, for example, their diversity policies, again, attracting great human capital, if you will, or great employees that will stick to working with that business because they have good social practices around safety, for example. Those are the types of companies that we think are more competitive and more interesting, and over a 3 to 5 year period will outperform their peers. So when we think about sustainability, we're really thinking about companies that are going to be very competitive over the long term.
So you bring up a really important point about branding. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but given that you work with so many business owners, obviously sustainability must be a part of their brand, especially since you're working with food and beverage. I mean, nobody wants to feel like they're eating toxic things. Mm-hmm. So is there kind of the corporate view that maybe you could also give that kind of counterbalances what she's saying about brand identity that maybe you could speak to a little more?
Yeah. So what I can say to that is that I do work with small food and beverage, but I also have the pleasure to work with a large food and beverage company, Frito-Lay. And this company has, it does environmental sustainability projects for water reduction, waste recycling that don't necessarily make financial sense. They just do it. And that's one of they have the 3 pillars, and the environment is one of them that their business is based on. So they make it their goal to make sure that they're not leaving behind a footprint that's full of, waste. Yeah, I mean, they use a lot of water in their process. They use a lot of waste. A lot of waste is produced, so they're trying to do what they can do to minimize that footprint that they have.
So big or small, I mean, brand identity is obviously, if you're selling something, it's really important, and the sustainability piece is obviously for many.
And Frito-Lay will use, and they use it for green marketing. That is another thing that food and beverage do. If something's made with alternative energy, it's a great, it's a consumer-driven market, so why not advertise that right on your package? So.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Rogers, I want to bring it back to you because I know that SUNY Morrisville is doing a lot of business partnerships, not business partnerships, but partnerships with local businesses that in a lot of ways are probably wanting to work with students for a myriad of reasons. I mean, maybe to get the brains of the millennials, maybe to foster some good education. What can you tell us about the types of partnerships that SUNY Morrisville is doing from a business standpoint, these business partners that you have?
Well, one of the ways that we reach out to business partners is very symbiotic. All of our bachelor students are required to have a full semester internship before they graduate. And so it's a fairly unique educational requirement that you don't find at many colleges. But because of our emphasis on applied learning, each one of our bachelor graduates has to have a full semester internship doing what they're going to do for their career in their final semester. So each semester, with hundreds of bachelor's graduates, we have hundreds of partners, mostly throughout Central New York, but also elsewhere in the state and out of state. So there's that kind of partnership, and often those students get a job offer. So we have a very immediate need for our students to align with a wide variety of businesses. But often our students are expected to engage in either sort of an entrepreneurial role or almost a sustainability officer role because of their orientation with that skill set. And just in general, I'll offer to the audience maybe some hope for the future. When you take these 18, 20, 24-year-old students that bring this passion, this inherent passion to protect the environment, and you combine it with the kind of knowledge and technology that's advancing, we don't really know all the ways in which our young graduates might produce new methods of saving energy or identifying resource reutilization. But we know this much, that their creative abilities, when they combine in a room together or in a Snapchat, some kind of a conversation, the ideas they exchange with this technology is incredibly affirming. I have no doubt that the greatest advances in environmental conservation and reuse of resources and to find ways to conserve and reuse waste, the best initiatives lie ahead. We haven't begun to scratch that surface. It's really the great ideas of young people and their passion for this combined with these advances in technology. I don't want to belabor the point, but as an ag institution, I've had the pleasure of working with some companies recently that want to come to Central New York and establish growing lettuce, tomatoes, fruits and vegetables 24/7, 365 with very dramatic indoor facilities. It's an incredibly important opportunity for upstate New York to have relatively cheap land, relatively cheap power and water, which is abundant in upstate, to serve a downstate market. So I think the way in which technology is going to disrupt a lot of our industries, agriculture, maybe chief among them, is truly exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's bring it back to home. So if people are to leave here today and maybe they're just interested in the concept, maybe they're looking to, stretch outside of their comfort zone a little bit more, and they want to try and kind of deepen their environmentalism and their sustainability, how do we bring this back home?
How do we bring it back home? It does start in the home, but from a business perspective, I think it's a whole lifestyle perspective, and just look at the behaviors that you're doing and the behaviors you wish the world did. I do it all the time. I head up the Earth Day litter cleanup, and prior to that, I may have walked by litter. But once you tell yourself this is an important thing to you, you start picking up the litter that you see from time to time. It's just a matter of really evaluating what you're doing right now and what you can do. But I also want to talk about motivating people to do this. And I was just talking with before someone who had contacted us, and we did a quick consultation, and we talked about getting buy-in from your employees and investing them in the practices. If you're going to start the ball, go with the low-hanging fruit, go with the paper and cardboard, and make sure everyone is actually separating it. We oftentimes overlook the easy stuff, but that easy stuff is the big stuff. And he was saying, I had everyone label their own bin. It can be stuff as simple as that, and then people start buying in. Or you send a memo out to everyone and say, hey, sustainability is something important to us. Give us your ideas of what we can do to be more sustainable. And when they give their ideas, they take a little ownership in that, especially when you start enacting some of them. Then people are much more likely to get on board, and it becomes more meaningful to them. So I think that when you want to enact it and bring it home, you want to connect everyone to it. It's why Facebook got popular, because it wasn't just news coming at you, it was news from your friends coming at you. It was people who were important to you. So having buy-in from people, making sure that people feel their voices are heard and that their ideas are being expressed and acted on is really important.
So, you know, we've kind of dotted this conversation with the topic of millennials, and I hate to belabor the point to those of you who may not be interested in the topic, but it's fascinating how quickly the world seems to be just changing at warp speed, and a lot of what you have discussed between the college campuses and even you in your offices, there's been a lot of discussion about the millennials demanding change. What are some of the ways that you're hearing about this change? How do they catch your ear? How do they catch your attention?
Sure. Well, although financial services is quite different than, you know, some of the recycling efforts we're talking about, what it does offer is an opportunity to bring people together to the table. And we find that sometimes there's a disconnect between the 18 to 22-year-old and their parents and the way they're thinking about finance. And so by discussing sustainable investing, it allows them both to bring something interesting to the table, because you're talking about, again, companies trying to be more successful, but you're bringing in these sustainability topics. So we use it really in a lot of dialogue with teens and their parents, with grandparents and their grandchildren, or with wealthier families, with those who are inheriting or taking over a family farm or a family business, and how they want to spend their money or invest their money. So we really think that it can bring people together as a topic.
Absolutely. Do you have anything to add?
Sure, let me just give a small lesson in what it's like to be a college president.
Please.
So, so I have to compliment WCNY. This is an amazing facility. It's a LEED Platinum facility. If we were to take Morrisville or ESF students, any college students on a tour, they'd be duly impressed. But if they were here in this room, Lauren, this is what they would say. President Rogers, what's this with the plastic bottle? So students are all about trying to have very micro, local behavioral changes to produce a global outcome. So they would say, why don't you have a glass that's probably cardboard, recyclable paper coming from the water faucet? So those are the kind of things. So there's almost a day that doesn't go by that I'm not learning something from them through some kind of critical assessment. They usually try to educate me as much as I might educate them. So we all learn every day about a very micro impact that across the globe produces a very profound global impact. So that's what it's like to be a president some days. A lot of fun.
All right, let's focus on things that come in glass bottles. Let's go back to breweries and wineries. I think that's everyone's favorite topic. So New York State's seen recent growth in these industries, right? So what are the successes that you're seeing towards sustainability as far as breweries and wineries are concerned?
So what I'm seeing is successes out there are, you know, one thing I will say, that the brewing community is a very tight-knit community. So rather than keep all their intellectual property to themselves, they share. So they actually write manuals that they publicly, on their Brewers Association and Master Brewers Association, they actually publish these for everyone to use, so that people can learn from other people's sustainability practices and practice it themselves. So one thing I'll say in the brewing community is they've figured out that, you know what, we're all in this together. Let's make it better together. So I commend the brewing industry for that. The other thing I've seen is the use of, beer produces a lot of what they call spent grains material. And there's really a push to use that. It's a waste material to not just put it in a landfill. Let's find animal feed, let's make dog biscuits out of it. Don't just put it in a landfill. And then from the wastewater perspective, I've seen a lot of breweries and wineries turn that high strength concentrated wastewater, instead of putting it into the environment, they'll create beneficial electricity out of it using an anaerobic digester on site. So, you know, it's a very conscious industry. It's neat to see it grow in New York State. I think, you know, you speak of millennials. I think they're demanding kind of more of the craftier beers now. So they're kind of driving this movement. You know, I watch my nieces and nephews, and they'll skip the Bud Light and go right, you know, to a good, tasty beer with a lot of hops in it. So, yeah. So I'd say, what's neat is seeing them grow, but also seeing them be good stewards of the environment in their growth.
Awesome.
I know where they could buy some of that craft beer. Right on
I'm going to go this weekend.
Should have brought some.
Yeah, I'll bring some next time in a
Next
glass bottle.
There you go.
Yeah,
You're learning.
always.
I'm so encouraged. We were having a conversation in the green room about how I have been contemplating, is sustainability just becoming so entrenched in the way that we do things, or is it tapering? And this conversation has kind of really brought me back to say, oh, no. We're on a huge trajectory right now. We're doing great things across all of these industries. And so the final question I'm going to ask each of you, and then we're going to open it up to questions, is where is sustainability going to be in 5 years?
I'll go first. I think 5 years is not far away. And I think sustainability has only been gaining momentum for the past 10, 15 years. I mean, hybrid cars, I remember one time doing a report on them when they were very novel, and now you see them everywhere. Wind farms were, there was maybe one in New York, and now they're springing up everywhere. I think that a lot of infrastructure is being built that's going to continue to exist. And I think the mentality of sustainability has been plugged at from so many different angles that I think that it's only going to be stronger in 5 years. That's my look at it, regardless of what small incremental hiccups we might see. I see sustainability as being a critical fundamental in a lot of behavior.
Agreed.
Yeah, I echo that. I mean, I think in the investment industry, you will no longer have a differentiated, sustainable offering and a traditional investment offering. It will be intertwined. And we won't say, I have a special fund that's just focused on a segment of the market. Every single product out there, every single investment manager, every single analyst will be looking at these issues. Best practices around natural resource, use of natural resources, best practices around recycling, best practices around human capital and attracting talent. And that, what we would refer to as being material but non-financial data, all of that will be factored in. So I think it'll be mainstream for investors when they go to invest. It'll just be part of the investment analysis process.
Yeah, I think I agree. Probably one of the biggest changes that I see in the next 5 years is the continued trend for decision makers to incorporate into their purchase decisions, whether it's a student enrolling in a college that has progressive environmental concerns, or whether it's shoppers at the store trying to figure out where the food came from. Is it a sustainable food practice? We're beginning to learn more about the manner in which our organizations engage in either sustainable practices or not. And so increasingly, it isn't not an add-on when we're designing a new building. The return on having sustainable architecture as part of a building will justify the investment. It'll produce positive returns over the long-term use of the building. Likewise, other kinds of investments that companies might make. They're going to hire sustainability officers to identify the ways in which they can undertake investments that have an ROI that's worth that investment. So there's this shift in consumer and decision makers that have incorporated now the return on dollar investments that will change the way in which companies and institutions will make explicit reference to environmental concerns. I think that trend has started, but it's going to gain even faster momentum with the kinds of consumers that we're producing. It's an exciting time.
I kind of want to ask a follow-up, if I can.
Of course.
So,
To me,
yeah.
I've only got one answer for you.
Well, so consumers are definitely driving markets, absolutely. And I do believe that we are going to more of this artisanal market, more local market, which I'm thrilled about. But, and I don't know if anyone up here can answer this, but you hear stories every day about how when these smaller markets start to take hold, the big guys kind of come in and find ways to squash it, whether that be through politics or buyouts or other avenues. Do we have any ideas on how to keep the smaller guys going strong? Does anyone on the panel?
Ultimately, in many markets, it's going to come down to quality. So as long as consumers locally believe that there's improved and enhanced quality or safety of food or beverage production, and there's that inherent sense that somebody who's local, if I know the farmer or the producer, there's some likelihood that the product is going to be safe or taste better. Consumers will pay a premium if they know where the food or the product or the service came from. That's increasingly true. And what's pushing that forward in part are the kinds of concerns. Romaine lettuce, recently there was a huge outbreak, and people weren't exactly sure where the lettuce came from. That's why I think some of the technology advances that are going to take place, and again, I'll mention food production. Indoor food production is incredibly efficient and unbelievably safe because in many cases it doesn't touch a human hand. And so that might have implications about employment, but if I knew I had a local controlled environmental agriculture facility that was always refreshing the ground pumice that it grows in and throws it into a microwave to get rid of the bacteria, then I'm going to be confident that I can buy from that producer locally, and I'm likely to even pay a premium for that. So I think the way in which technology is going to dramatically disrupt some of these markets is going to play out in favor of enhanced consumer quality and safety. So I think it's going to be a sustainable outcome for those vendors who subscribe to these enhanced technologies.
Excellent. I would just add on that, the supply chain transparency kind of comes back to this comment of where does that chicken come from that you go to buy. And so I think for the larger establishments, you'll notice even when you go to shop, it might say, or in a restaurant, locally sourced food, locally sourced products. So we're all demanding information to go all the way to the very end of the supply chain. And that information is now made available to all of us through labeling, through certifications, and sometimes people will proactively put this in their marketing materials because they know we as consumers are looking for that. One of my colleagues makes a very funny reference to a Starbucks latte that he used to get every day on his way to work, and he would very happily consume that until Starbucks started putting information about the calories related to that latte. Mm-hmm. And suddenly he would kind of look at it and think, maybe I won't get the muffin with that. But the more information we have, the better we are at making decisions. Mm-hmm. And I think that that consumers, millennials or not, are demanding that.
Let me just add quickly that Governor Cuomo has tasked Commissioner Richard Ball, the Commissioner of Ag and Markets, to come up with a label, a certification for a wide variety of agricultural products, so that if you go to Wegmans and it's labeled with that New York certification, you'll know that it was not only grown locally in New York, but you'll have every confidence that it's gone through a series of safety checks so that you can feel safe in buying that local, safe product. And those kind of certifications don't come about cheaply, but they do enhance producers and the confidence of consumers in making those purchases.
California Olive Ranch did that, and the state of California did it with the olive market, and you didn't have a clue what you were getting from Italy or Portugal, and it was a great success.
5 years, where are we going to be?
I think I'll stick with where I'd like to be. So one thing I'm seeing with sustainability is, we're an economically driven society, and at the end of the day, it has to make financial sense. What I would like to see is, and it's encouraging to hear, development of technology at universities, and the fact that the students want these technologies developed, and that people are investing in technologies. But I think we need to focus on ways to make sustainability more economical. So I'm out there implementing technologies, and they can't compete with landfills. They can't compete with some of these other. So I think we need to focus our research into making the ability to recycle materials and reuse them rather than putting them in a landfill more economical. So that's where I'd like to be in 5 years.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense.
It does. So at this point, we'd like to open the floor up for questions from the audience.
Can I make one statement, then I have to leave?
Yeah, do you, absolutely.
Whatever I say, you're not gonna have a shot. Peer pressure, I think, is huge. Used to be, you kind of were looked at in one light if you were really conscientious about recycling. Why? Oh, really? When that gets turned around and it goes just the opposite light, as the president was saying, that will be a big driver in how things go.
You see it, I'll just make this quick comment. You see it in a variety of ways. There are a couple things on Morrisville I can't understand. I can't explain. There's this weird thing where students open the door for everybody. Maybe it's just because I'm old and the president. But you also see, compared to when I was a student in the 70s, you see students picking up trash. If somebody's dropping it, obviously, but you don't see a lot of, it's not exactly Disney at Morrisville, but you don't see a lot of trash because you'll see people picking it up. And then if they see somebody drop something, they will chastise that student. So it's a very public condemning of bad practices, which is great.
About 3 questions, not even sure how to frame it, but the question really goes to recycling and peer pressure, everything else. One of the issues that I see, and I may be wrong, I'm very passionate about it, is our recycling efforts. Reduce comes first, reuse comes second. Recycle comes third, but oftentimes we recycle and say, this is a recyclable product, I don't have to deal with it, put it in the blue bin. If we are in a position now, because of the contamination of the recyclable environment, if we have people here that are really interested in making sure that our peers are truly invested in sustainable recycling, with what's happened in China, should we be in a position now to say, why are you putting that in your recycling bin? It's not recyclable. And try to get people to really understand what belongs in that bin.
Yeah, I think that's a really silver lining to what's happening in China, is that people have been recycling aggressively yet incorrectly, and this is an opportunity to open that conversation and say, this is what is recyclable and this is what's not recyclable. And it may have just been a time when people were floating around, maybe not recycling at all. And by bringing that conversation up and saying, actually, that PVC pipe is not recyclable, don't put it in your blue bin. You may have thought you were doing a good thing. All of a sudden, now we're thinking, oh wait, what are the other things maybe I've been doing wrong? So I think that it is a great motivator to get people talking about it. And then when you talk about it, your peers talk about it, and the conversation happens, and the conversation drives your state of mind.
I'm going to add to that and say that I actually had a friend on Facebook post what can and cannot be recycled in our blue bins, and I am ashamed to say I was recycling 2 things that I should not have been. So, but because it was posted, because it was on social media, I was able to, correct my poor behavior. Yeah.
I'd like to make a comment and ask a question. Concerning recyclable materials, the peer pressure idea, the economics, I think we have to focus on making a domestic market for our recyclables and tell people, if you go to a restaurant and they're giving you your food that you're taking home and something you can't recycle, say something. Say, listen, why don't you go for something that can be recyclable or biodegraded? And I think that will form a market, a domestic market, as well as change the producers of this stuff. Maybe that was the question. But
Well, you've seen it in the food business. I mean, nowadays, everything was always styrofoam. Now they're cardboard boxes that you get your hamburger in.
great.
Or it's, so I think that peer pressure, we do have to speak up on the spot. They hear enough of it from the consumers.
Bring your own. That's the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a question.
Oh, can we?
Now that we're on the topic of incorrect recycling, Dale, could you comment on what people in Onondaga County are incorrectly recycling the most?
The most? It's hard to say, but plastic bags, if there's one thing I can say, keep your plastic bags out of the blue bin. They are recyclable at the stores, at large retailers. They're all recyclable there. Please keep your plastic bags out of the recycling bin. And if you're going to use plastic bags at all, try to use reusable bags, bring your own bag type of thing. That would be the number one thing I would say that's going in the recycling bin that really shouldn't. Not to dwell, there's 100 things, there's 1,000 things.
You got a question?
All right, so it looks like I see some other millennials over there, but there's a lot of talk of millennials. Hey. But having listening to a lot of this conversation about peer pressure, I came from RIT as well, and it sounds like Morrisville is on the same level as RIT in educating even students that aren't in majors involved with sustainability and educating them on the same level as someone who is studying sustainability. And I did study sustainability, and now I'm working in manufacturing in Elbridge, New York, and going into a manufacturing situation coming from that institution that constantly ingrained in my head, this is what is sustainable and this is what's not. So this whole talk of peer pressure, I'm just encouraging everybody to keep an open mind and understand that people are coming from different levels. So even the thing that you made about the water, I was back there listening to the commentary, and then they don't let people have bottled water, but they said, we'll have this exception of 5 people just because we don't want anyone to kick over water. So this whole open-minded, we want to encourage everybody to be sustainable, but at least in my situation in my manufacturing facility, which my company won the award last year, and they're very, very encouraging and very supportive of me making suggestions about sustainability, but I always have to keep in mind that it's not always the most cost-efficient way to go. So I encourage everybody to make sustainable suggestions, but to always do it, because I have experienced backlash both at school and at my new company. Not necessarily huge backlash, but also I just have learned to word things in a way that is, this is where I'm coming from. I understand that this is the way that it was. What if we try this, and if it's not cost effective, all right, we'll try it next time. But I mean, I guess that's just my millennial outlook for everybody to just, yeah.
That's good.
All right.
Perfect. No, do you want to answer?
Well, I just wanted to piggyback off of that. It really is all about the approach. When you shame someone for doing something wrong, they may just resent you and want to do it wrong more. And there's really truth to that. So your approach is very important. So peer pressure is one thing, but you want to be on people's side. You don't want to say, you're doing it wrong, you're a bad person. They're like, well, then I'm always going to.
That's called communication skills.
Communication skills, yeah.
Yeah, you really want this change to be more evolutionary than revolutionary, because a revolution often can be very confusing. It's too much change too fast. So, but on a college campus, you'll see students that are very committed to it, and you'll see it manifest in a variety of ways that often is very small kinds of behavior. And so if you wanted to bring beer from our copper turret, you would put it in a glass growler, because it's not only bar, and you would bring it back for a refill. So we don't have cans at the turret.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim Kite, Focus Greater Syracuse. A suggestion to add into your conversation and all this, it's nice to talk about cool engineering stuff, and it's nice to talk about return on investment and talk about kids in college. But if you don't talk about jobs, there's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to hear what you're saying and saying, I don't know what this means. And I think we have to do a better job of tying the benefits of sustainability for the environment and for society, for those who care about it, who know they're going to get a job when they come out of school and they're going to RIT, and they can be as college-like as they want because they know they're going to have a nice career. Well, what about all those people that need work? Where's the work in recycling? Do we talk to them about jobs that tie into recycling? Do we talk about the jobs that can be there, the type of careers you can have for regular people who aren't going to spend $100,000 to go to college? I think you need to work that into the discussions and let people know that it's not just it's good for the environment, it also could lead to a good career for you and your family as well.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And I think someone had brought up a question earlier before about, creating domestic demand for things. And, if we had more domestic recycling going on. One of the things, Okra has a compost site. It's serviced by actually Chris Noble. He has another company which does organics hauling. There's an opportunity in Syracuse. This is a great forum. I was hoping we could talk about this. There are 85 restaurants downtown, but it's difficult to move their food waste out if you have incremental, this account here, this account there. But if there were like a micro hauler who started up hauling just downtown business, 85 businesses. I did some back of the napkin calculations. That's like 1,000 tons a year of food waste that could be pulled out. And that's jobs right there, and that's innovation, and that's inspirational to the people in the community. So I think that there are a lot of jobs that are related to sustainability, and there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurial behavior too.
Yeah, and I think it plays into the whole technology development and the need for driving more economical solutions for recycling. I think that will create a lot of...
Yeah.
With that being said, I didn't mean to cut you short, we recognized possibilities 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And one of our members who's not here today is Syracuse Haulers. And do not think that composting is the cheaper way to go. They did it's more expensive to be able to grab it, scrape it all, put it together, and for Syracuse Hauler to be able to pick that up and not have it sitting around all the time. But they did it for a couple reasons. A, they did it because they're responsible. They also did it because they believe that their customers would appreciate the fact that they spent the extra dollar to do the right thing. I mean, let's look at our ocean. Is there any plastic in our ocean? I just bought 2 bracelets. I don't know what it is, but it goes to 4 ocean. It's $20, and for each bracelet you buy, they take a pound of waste out of the ocean. So I bought 2. Just little things we all can do, multiplied by the number of people we have.
And if you added to that the fact that 5 people got jobs that they make $45,000 a year, then you can scrape the plate. You can't just, I will say, scrape the plate. If you're telling me 5 people are going to get jobs because of scraping the plate and they're going to take care of their families, I'll pay the extra money. It's got to be more than just...
The other question is the kind of job that you're looking for. And where I've seen a lot of innovation is in incubators. And incubators are community-based, and they work oftentimes alongside universities. And they are looking for those innovative technologies that Sarah mentioned. And that's where communities can come together to fund the incubators, to help the startups, and those startups can be supported by the local community and hire locals, but you're looking at a better type of job in terms of the wage. So I think it's fascinating to see how all of this brings academics and practitioners and financial services folks and those in municipalities on recycling. It brings us all together, because at the end of the day, this is a community effort. It's all coming down to what you said is local with the students. It's at a very micro level, but it has a global impact. Yes?
Also called return on investment. Regardless of your perspective, I want to applaud Sun for creating this forum. I'm curious as to how sustainable is this event? Can we leverage, or is this event going to be put forth and dispersed and marketed to the point that we could create this discussion in a broader perspective than just this community event?
You know, I can actually speak to that.
Are those forums taking place? Thank you.
If you go on the tour at 7, well, and we're going to run a little bit over, a few minutes over, you will actually learn a little bit more about how right here at WCNY we are extremely sustainable with events like this. Just a quick example, the plates, the silverware, the cups that you used this evening, those were completely recycled, compostable. And to Dr. Rogers, yes, I put bottled waters up there just for you because this is being being recorded, so I just, we can't take chances. But we did have a great diffuser and water. We reuse a lot of our decor. We use linens in-house. I mean, I can go on. So if you do the quick tour, you're going to get a laundry list from Debbie Stack of some of the great ways that we're sustainable with events. And as Sun continues to do social events and forums like this, we will continue to grow on the sustainable efforts around that. I love the dialogue we're having, but we do only have time for maybe one more question. Lauren?
I'll take it out to the crowd if anybody's got one last burning question. Yes.
It used to be that people separated bottles, glass, plastic and whatnot from paper products happily. And now you throw them all together, which means they have to be separated somewhere at Okra. Why not take the advantage of people wanting to separate themselves, separate the power products?
There are a lot of ins and outs on that one, and that was something that was debated, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, whenever single stream, which is what we call the current system, was implemented. It used to be done that way, but the thought behind it was, whether right or wrong, was that if you say everything just goes in one bin, we will get larger volumes of recyclables overall. The contamination may be a little higher, but we'll get larger volumes overall. That was the thinking behind the shift. Whether or not it panned out to be the best idea, I can't speak to that. There are people who are thinking about going back to that, what we call dual stream, where you separate it out. That's not where our head is at right now in our community, but it is being considered in other places.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And to the panel, if you want to remain seated, we just have a couple quick closing. We've got a couple special awards that we're going to give out. But again, thank you for being here this evening and supporting Sustainable Upstate Network and WCNY in this event. I'm going to turn it over to Andy, who's going to go with our first award presentation.
Thank you, Joel. And please take the tour if you haven't taken it. It's absolutely amazing. And it's more about, it's not just sustainability. They have their own city upstairs that teaches our little ones, when they come in, they have to open up a bank account, they have to go to the post office, they got judges, they got police officers, they got printing shops, they have everything. They teach them how. It's just amazing. So please take the tour. I wasn't paid to say that, I just was so impressed. Okay, so, yeah, thank you. I already gave me a drink or two. So with that being said, one of the things that we've done each year at our events is we try to recognize one Sun member. There's always, there's always that one person that's always given that little extra effort that maybe raises the bar for all the other members. And I'm very happy to announce our 2018 member. And his name, and you might be surprised, but that's okay, is Dan Martini. And Dan Martini is with Three Peaks Energy. He's also one of the two major sponsors and has been for these events all along. So he puts his money where his mouth is. So Dan, please come up and accept the award as our Member of the Year. Hold your award. I know you're a very shy guy, but you got a lot to say. Why don't you just share a moment? It's just something. He does such a great job for us. He's always pushing us.
This is really a bit of a shock to me, but suffice it to say, I've really enjoyed working with the folks here at the Sun Group. Just a great group of people that, in all honesty, I think most of them, like myself, come to this group because we like the members in the group. It isn't about anything other than that. Just a great bunch of people. The plus side is that great bunch of people also accomplishes an awful lot. We push the message of sustainability, and I think we help a lot of people. So if you're not a member, give it a thought. We'd love to have you on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Congratulations. Okay, I'm almost done, and we're almost done. My last responsibility is to introduce another executive board member, Mr. Mike Callett from Cushman Wakefield, and he has the pleasure of introducing our next great award recipient. Mike?
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to make reference to a few points, little facts, tidbits of information specific to the organization that is receiving the Sustainable Organization of the Year Award from Sun. And I'm just going to mention these references, and it's quite impressive. 132 stores, 10 million square feet, 1947. That specifically references Raymore and Flanigan. It's an organization that I have known my whole life. I won't speak of how many years that is, but my whole life. It was founded by Bernie and Arnie Goldberg. They had a store on Warren Street, one store, and now they have 132 stores nationally. Superficially, they're being given this award because of the intense amount of product, waste, cardboard, furniture, mattresses, that they put great effort into recycling and to make sure it receives a responsible home. But this is an organization that is part of our community. Without any question, this organization could locate anywhere in the country, but they choose to locate in our community, Syracuse, New York. That's a huge win for us, and it's a real true statement of the leadership associated with Raymore and Flanigan. So for me, it's a great honor. As a side note, I personally am very friendly with the president of Raymore and Flanigan. Frankly, he and I were next door neighbors as we were young tots growing up across the street from one another in the Salt Springs area of the city. And so I know this family well. I'm very, very proud and honored to give this award to Raymore and Flanigan tonight. Congratulations. My pleasure. Congratulations. My pleasure. Congratulations. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We travel in threes, Raymore and Flanigan. So, hi everybody. I'm Adam Goldberg from Raymore and Flanigan. Liz Dwyer and Erica Clark, some of our other marketing leaders and leaders in the company. But first of all, before I jump into the pre-written notes, I just give an extra round of applause for the panel here. I thought it was fascinating personally, and certainly on behalf of our organization, we really do appreciate all the comments that you made. So, as Mike mentioned, Raymore and Flanigan is a privately owned and operated family business, and that's really why Sarah's story about Noblehurst Farm stuck with me, certainly. So thank you for sharing that. On behalf of the many associates of Raymore and Flanigan, we are honored and humbled to accept this token of recognition as a Sustainable Organization of the Year. Since 1947, as was mentioned, our business has been based in Syracuse, New York, and has been committed to providing quality furniture and mattresses to our customers and exciting, fulfilling careers to our associates. As our business has expanded from one store on Warren Street to more than 120 showrooms in 19 warehouses in 7 states, we have recognized the responsibility that it comes with this growth and have increased our commitment to social and environmental causes. In 2017, we recycled and prepared for reuse over 17 million pounds of styrofoam, cardboard, and plastic wrap. These would have otherwise been disposed of and had a detrimental effect on the people and communities in which we do business. Raymore and Flanagan currently operates 5 recycling facilities in the Northeast, and earlier this year was forced to expand one of these buildings to accommodate the growing amount of recyclable material. As of several months ago, all print materials, including 6 million 100-plus page design magazines, were switched to be printed on recycled paper. Additionally, the majority of our stores and warehouses now utilize LED lighting, which requires nearly half of the energy than previous fixtures. Through these and other initiatives, we are deeply committed to furthering our sustainability efforts and finding new ways to care for our environment and our communities. Thank you again from all the Raymore and Flanagan team. We are truly honored for this recognition.
I just have to make a comment because I don't know if it was myself that highlighted what Raymore and Flanagan's does, but I personally make it my business to go upstream and find out what's going on. So they don't know this, and way before, it might have even been before Sun, but I don't think so, I asked to be able to see their facility to see what they're doing. I mean, if you can imagine when you receive a box of furniture, how much junk. It's junk. It's being recycled, but it's junk. It's plastic wrap, it's styrofoam, cardboard can be recycled. Their facility is unbelievable. But when I opened up something that I was reading, there was a full-page story, not about buying a good mattress, not about buying furniture from a local company, but it was all about their commitment to dealing with something that a lot of us kind of push under the rug or don't address. So for that, I just wanted to add that word. Thank you so much for what you're doing, and everybody could learn from what you do, and we appreciate and we're happy you received the award. I'm done.
In closing, again, my name's Joy L. Clance. I'm the Senior Director here of our Events Division, Premier Events. I hope you enjoyed your experience in our television studios. I hope that you will go on the tour with Debbie Stack, our Senior Director of Education and Community Engagement, and definitely learn more about Sun. If you have questions, feel free to approach our panelists. We have been recording this, we're editing this, and you will be able to access today's panel discussion through our website and through the Sun Sustainable Upstate Network website. So if somebody couldn't be here with you today and they might have interest in this topic, you will be able to access that. So special thank you again to Lauren, our moderator, and our wonderful panel. And please help yourself to any beverages or food on your way out the door. And if you have questions about Sun, you can approach Colette Powers, who's here in the room. Colette, give a little wave back there, and or Andy Pico. And thank you again so much for being here for Green Business and a Sustainable Future.